Namaste everyone. I wanted to make a video to tell you guys a story. I had the pleasure of going to some friend's house the other night, and they were going around and asking people how they first came into contact with their spiritual master. And there wasn't enough time for everyone to tell their full stories, but I had some nice insights that I thought would be valuable to share about my personal story. And so I wanted to make this video to share that story with you of how I met my spiritual master. And so let me first just pay my respects or offer my obeisances to my spiritual teacher. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa Iti Namine. And I just also wanted to say as a disclaimer, that I may come across in this video as being an arrogant person, because I am an arrogant person. But I hope that will not prevent you from still gaining something from my story. I grew up in a family in Texas, and from a young age I had a really high IQ, and this was also one of the things that caused me to be so arrogant, being smarter than, or being comparatively smarter than my peer group at the time. And then at the age of 15, graduating from high school and starting college at an early age led me to somehow believe that I was superior, to others, that I was somehow special. And this created a problem for me when I started encountering friends that were getting into drugs and chemical substances. And I started taking those and developed an affinity for that type of lifestyle. And it kind of all exploded and erupted for me when I was 17, and I ended up overdosing on some ecstasy tablets and ended up in a rehabilitation hospital for 10 days, where they were monitoring, what me coming back to normal, so that I could be released. I was out there, I had really kind of spun myself out. And during that time, those 10 days in the hospital, I started reading the Bible, and I came to this conclusion, or realization, that God was actually real, that Jesus was real, that I could pray to Jesus and I could have a heart-to-heart, a real connection or relationship with Him that transcended space and time. So I could, even though that He wasn't physically present before me, I could pray to Jesus and ask for His help and ask for His guidance. And from that moment, I began a journey of surrendering to Jesus, surrendering to God, and asking Jesus to help guide me back to God. I really wanted to be out of this world and go back to God, into the kingdom of God. And my life started actually taking a turn after that, in small increments, because of the drugs and the drug addiction. It was a recurring thing that kept happening, and at some point the pain of existence became greater than the pleasure that I was experiencing. And so I really wanted to just cease existing, because I thought that would be a good way out of the suffering. But I knew that suicide wasn't really ever an option for me, but I still wanted a viable option, and I was kind of confused as to how I could solve the problem of suffering and of getting rid of my suffering. And I know many of you may be dealing with different struggles and different things, and there is a solution, and so I want you to know that there is a viable solution to the problem of your suffering, and you can get rid of it, and you can live a nice life. for me, it all began with coming into contact with my spiritual master. And so I began praying deeply in my heart, and I wanted to know when, because the message that I was getting, that when I was praying, you know, deeply, was that I needed to be patient, that I needed to wait. Sometimes we have to be patient in life. There are things we have to go through to learn. But I've always been such a demanding person, being arrogant. And I was always demanding, well, how long do I have to wait? When? And this was still when I was 17. And the answer that I was getting within my heart, from the Lord in the heart, was, after much demanding, was that when I was to be 20 years old, something would happen that would change everything. And so I needed to just hold on. And so I held on. There were 3 years there from 17 to 20 where I went through some really incredibly excruciating pain. But I held on because I had received some internal guidance that I needed to hold on until I was 20. And then when I was 20, I was cruising around at different music festivals. And I was at Bonnaroo, and someone gave me a copy of a book by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, translated, called Beyond Illusion and Doubt. And I had been wandering around, and I'd been walking and walking for days. I'd been up all night the night before, and finally it seemed like I'd been walking forever, and this was the end of my walking. This was the end of the journey, and the man handed me the book. I was unable to read the book, but I knew that this was special, that this was a gift that I had been waiting my whole life to receive. And when I took it home, I read it 2 weeks later, and that book was called Beyond Illusion and Doubt. It was a transcribed lecture of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada speaking to some of his students about the psychologists and philosophers of the last 50, 100, even 1,000 years in Western philosophical thought. And he described what was true about what they said and what was not true. And I was completely blown away. It answered all the questions I ever had. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada demonstrated with his thoughts and with his words that he clearly had the most superior understanding of all of the deepest levels of philosophical thought and understanding. And I was completely captivated, and I knew that this was the truth that I had been seeking my whole life, and this was the message that God had sent for me, that I'd been waiting for. And so I ordered the book Bhagavad Gita as it is, which is a longer book, which is considered the essence of all of the teachings of the Vedas, of the original yoga teachings. The essence, the cream, is called the Bhagavad Gita as it is, or the song of the Supreme Being himself, the words of the Supreme Being. And Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada translated this book and brought it to the West in 1970s. And so when I came into contact with that book, that changed everything for me. And I read it over the year, and I made a lot of changes in my life after reading that book. And I made a conscious decision that I wanted to surrender my life to the Supreme Being. I wanted to put my heart into His hands. I wanted to live a life that was pleasing to Him. And I'm still tested to that decision every day, every minute, as to is that really what I meant, or am I being duplistic and false? And that is something that we all have to go through as we struggle internally. In other words, are you really just surrendering because you're experiencing suffering and you don't want to suffer anymore? Or are you sincerely surrendering because that's what you want to do, because you want to make the Lord's will the center of your life and His pleasure the center of your existence, and give up seeking and searching for your own pleasure and happiness? And if that's the case, if that's the reality, then that sincerity will be noted and seen by God Himself, and then God Himself will take you into the hands of His confidential friend and servant, who is your spiritual master. And what happened to me was that a few years, maybe 1 year after reading the Bhagavad Gita, I came into contact with some students and disciples of my spiritual master, Jagat Guru Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa. And those nice students and disciples then introduced me to him through his audio lectures and tapes. And there's two ways that one can have association with the spiritual master. One is direct darshan, which means in the physical presence, and the other is, I forget the Sanskrit term, but it is by reading his words and by hearing his lectures and tapes. So this association is key, and the effect that the bona fide spiritual master will have on your heart is that he is able to affect you through an invisible potency to transform your heart from a lover of this world to a lover of Krishna, to a lover of the Supreme Being, a lover of God. And so this transformation is necessary, and it is a necessity for a person to enter the kingdom of God. They have to undergo this transformation. That is what is called the eligibility of the candidate. The candidate must become first eligible to make the transformation, and then once they make the transformation, then that transformation in itself is the entrance into the kingdom of God. It's not a location or a place that you can drive to or fly to. It's a state of consciousness that you enter into when all of the crud and the sinful desires and the dark qualities that are covering your heart are extinguished and annihilated. And that happens when a person receives the transcendental sound or the mantra from their spiritual master. It has that potency and that cleansing effect. By hearing and repeating that sound, gradually the natural state of the soul begins to blossom in the heart. So it's not something one achieves or obtains. It's not an enlightenment that you have to struggle to accomplish. It's a natural condition of enlightenment and love and eternality, immortality, that is there already, but it's being covered up by illusion. So, the story goes that by the grace of God, one gets Guru, and by the grace of Guru, one gets God. So only by approaching the bona fide spiritual master, rendering service unto him, and inquiring from him submissively, can a person be introduced to the Supreme Being himself. There's no other way than that. So a person must accept and embrace this truth and this reality, and not be arrogant like me, and try to be humble as much as possible. And that way they can become eligible to be free, be happy, and live a life which is transcending the suffering of this world. So thank you very much for listening. Haribol. I left out one part. So after reading the Bhagavad Gita, I ordered a picture of Krishna and I put it up, and I bought a special plate for him. And I began offering my food to him every day, at least once a day, and I would try to chant one mantra per day. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Some days I would forget, but the days that I remembered, I would consider that to be a very good, auspicious day. And shortly after, I graduated college, and I was considering, becoming a monk, joining the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, moving to Dallas, and just giving up sessions. My friends seemed to think it was a good idea, which made me think, well, my friends just don't seem to care much about me if they don't care if I go be a monk, which made me kind of sad. But at the same time, I didn't really feel comfortable being a monk. You know, I didn't want to shave my head. I had dreadlocks, and there were just certain things that just didn't feel right about it. So I ended up going to Hawaii instead, which was a pretty interesting story, because I was going to go to Colorado, but I ended up wrecking my van just a couple weeks before my trip to Colorado, and I couldn't drive to Colorado, and I kept thinking, well, there's obstacles keep happening that are trying to prevent me from leaving Texas, but I knew I wanted to get out of there because I just graduated, and all I'd ever wanted to do was leave Texas, but I was always stuck there. And so I got a plane ticket, and I thought, well, California's got beaches, Colorado's got mountains, Hawaii's got beaches and mountains. So I thought that's the most superior of them all place to go. And so I got a ticket to Hawaii, and one of my friends came with me, and we went on a little after college vacation. And then we went to the Big Island, and on the Big Island we met a guy at the airport that was from the same town in Texas that we were from, and he was doing a thing called woofing, where you work on organic farms, you get a free place to stay, and sometimes free food. And so we didn't really want to pay for a hotel, so we decided we'd go check out the woofing scene for a week, and we ended up going to this place called, what was it called? It was a noni farm called Dharma Farms, and it was owned by Shankar Ananda Das, who was a really nice person who offered to teach us some surfing lessons, and only had to do 3 hours a day, rustic camping situation. And so we went there, and that Sunday he said, I'll take you to this pizza party. And we drove down, and we went to the Johnson family farms down there in the area, which is now one of the evacuation zones from the lava, and took us to this big pizza party, kirtan, where everyone was chanting these transcendental mantras and completely rocking out, you know, like mosh pit style, hippies everywhere, and it was really fun. And I remember seeing Garuda Das and hearing Garuda Das chanting. It had a really powerful effect on my heart, because here I was, you know, I had read the Bhagavad Gita. I knew that it was true, but I didn't know how a person could live that life, you know, because I had tried and failed pretty utterly, having no association with others. And here was a person who was living the lifestyle, and when he gave a talk after the chant, he very clearly and directly enunciated the truth in a no bullshit manner that I am eternally grateful for, because no person that I've ever met has ever been that clear and concise and helpful in telling me exactly what problems that I need to confront, and not bullshitting around. Everyone in this world has a tendency to kind of pretend that they're okay, pretend that things are going well, and we have a culture and a society that has propagated this to the maximum. So anytime I talk to my other so-called friends or family members, everyone's pretending that they're having such a good time, and it is such utter bullshit. And Garuda Das was the first person I ever met that was real and truthful to me from the get-go, and that is a true friend, and that is a rare person, and I will be forever grateful to Garuda Das for the way that he has helped me and inspired me and allowed me to listen in, and not told me to get the fuck out of there, even though I probably, you know, deserved that many times, being arrogant. So Garuda Das was the one who introduced me to Srila Prabhupada, and Garuda Das told me that you needed to pray internally to know whether or not this person is the true representative of God. true confidential friend and servant of God, you have to pray, you have to be serious. He told the story of how he came to that conclusion through prayer after getting severely and heavily chastised, and he had to know. There was nothing that was more important to him than knowing whether or not, is this your representative or not, because I need to know, can I give my life to this person or not? I need to know. There's nothing else that's important to me. This is what I have to know. So in this way, in this attitude, he was able to experience the reality through direct realization. And I knew from the get-go that Garuda Das was not the kind of person that was going to surrender to a fake guru, phony guru, because I could tell the caliber of the type of person that he was, and you know, hearing him talk about the things he had gone through and the way that he thoroughly examines different things. But in addition to that, I also did what he instructed me to do, which was take that question to the Lord in my heart and ask, is Srila Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa your confidential friend and servant? And I got a clear indication that yes, this is a person I can give my life to and be safe. And the first time that I heard Srila Prabhupada was the next week in a lecture when I was at Aloha Farms. And I was doing some chanting on Japa beats. This was a pre-recorded lecture that I was listening to, keep in mind. And I was chanting while listening to this lecture. So I basically, you know, the ideal way to listen to a lecture is you know, you focus on the sound, you focus on the words. But myself being so scattered, I was simultaneously doing my japa while listening. And so the first thing I hear from this lecture is Srila Prabhupada says, so are you just gonna keep chanting, or are you gonna listen? And I'm going, I look around, is he watching me? What's going on? You know, so I stopped chanting my japa and I listened, you know. And the lecture was really nice. It was talking about a wolf in sheep's clothing. He said that sometimes there's wolves dressed up like sheep, but there's also sheep dressed up like wolves. This lecture made me cry because it made me feel like a wolf dressed up like sheep's clothing. In other words, a person who's trying to be a nice devotee, project themselves as a spiritual person, but reality is a wolf. It's a fault finder, selfish person that merely just causes pain to others. And so, feeling that reality in my heart, I was crying and realizing that this person could see right through me, and that there's nothing that I could ever hide from him. And so I knew that this was my spiritual master, you know. And continuing on to hear his lectures and learn from him led me on this great journey that has and had and continues to have a profound effect on my heart, and brings me the greatest joy that I would have never imagined that a person would be possible to experience, especially without drugs. I used to think you had to take drugs to experience these altered states or these amazing emotional states, but the drugs really just don't help a person at all. They just cover you, cloud you more, bring yourself more self-centered, more attached to the material energy, more attached to your mind, empowering your mind, making your mind stronger, more difficult to conquer. Don't recommend those at all. And so this was it. This was the beginning for me. This was how I was introduced to my spiritual master. So God brought me to Guru, and Guru is now giving me God, trying to give me God. So now it's just a matter of me accepting and embracing the gift that's being offered to me, and giving up my duplicity, my arrogance, and all of my excuses, just doing what he's instructing me to do out of his love and compassion for even a person like me. It was, yeah. Anyway, so I hope this is helpful to you, and please contact me if you have any other questions, and I'll be happy to have a personal discussion with you. Namaste.